Welcome, everyone. I'm Monica. I work at Booklyn, and I'll be your host tonight for the second episode of My Favorite Book, an original program of Booklyn Inc. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the land from which we're broadcasting tonight is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape peoples. We ask that you join us in acknowledging the Lenape community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. Booklyn Inc. is a nonprofit organization located in Brooklyn, New York. We're celebrating 22 years of promoting artist books, both as artwork and as research materials. We distribute work by artists and organizations within the academic market. We host workshops and exhibitions, and we publish books and archival box sets. And for more information about us, just check out our website at booklyn.org and follow us on Instagram at booklynart. I also want to take a minute to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs for supporting My Favorite Book. Thank you so much. And I have a few announcements before we get started. We're super excited to announce that our newly edited and redesigned education manual is available for free download. This is a great resource for any teachers. It's great for rainy day activities, for the whole family. It's all ages. You can learn how to do a pamphlet stitch or an accordion fold, and there's just a ton of lesson plans in there. So be sure to download that. You can get it through Linktree/Booklyn. And then this Saturday, June 5th in Brooklyn, we're presenting Zine Jam. It's a workshop for all ages. Jan Descartes and Elvis Bacchitis will be the facilitators, and we even have some special guests. Our friends from Interference Archive are showing up, and they're bringing a bunch of zines to look through. And it's hosted by more friends at Old Stone House. If you don't know Old Stone House, they're pretty incredible. They're part of the New York City park system in the neighborhood of Park Slope. So it's outdoors, it's free, it's fun, and you totally should come. Okay, this is our first serialized online program, My Favorite Book, and it's something that we're very excited about. We're going to ask 18 artists over the course of this month how to very quickly tell us about their favorite book that they've ever made. Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday throughout the entire month, we'll have a new episode for you every night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. Check our website for a full schedule, and you can drop in any night on YouTube Live to catch our latest episode. Okay, so tonight, there's got to be another way to say we're so excited, we're so thrilled. We're thrilled to introduce STo Len, who's an old friend of Booklyn's. STo, maybe you can tell us how far we go back in our relationship. He's going to present his book, The End Papers. I'm going to read just a brief bio about STo to give you a little more background information. They're going to talk for 15 minutes, and then we'll do a brief Q&A. I assume that everybody's watching on YouTube Live, so put any questions you have as you're watching into the chat, and I'll channel those to STo. If you don't have any questions, that's totally fine. Sit back and relax, and I have a few questions for STo. Okay. STo Len is a genre-fluid artist with interests in printmaking, installation, sound, video, and performance. The cross-disciplinary nature of Len's work has included collaborations with bodies of water, transforming public space into art studios, recycling waste into art materials, and hosting performances at Superfund sites, which I really hope he talks about. STo Len is based in Queens, New York, with familial roots in Vietnam and Virginia, and his work incorporates these bonds by connecting issues of their history, environment, traditions, and politics. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. STo. Hi, STo.
Hi, am I on? Do you see me?
You're on, and you look hot.
Yeah, this is the Predator Vision. It's like an old iPhone of mine that for some reason, I don't know, this is what it looks like. So, but don't worry, I have lots to show you all. Thank you for having me. I was really happy to get the invite from Brooklyn. We do go way back. And I definitely have to talk about Brooklyn in this my favorite book episode. But let's see. Without further ado, let me go to my regular screen. It was funny, the idea of my favorite book. I said yes to doing this, and then for weeks I was thinking, God, what should I choose? I mean, books and art, they're like children. How do you choose one? It's like you birth these children and then you kick them out into the world. Hopefully they find homes of their own. Plenty of them are still around my house, but it's a funny situation to choose your favorite. And I think on a normal day I would say the last book I made was my favorite, which I have right here. This is a book that I made this past year. This is about a residency I did at a wastewater treatment facility in Virginia. And the book, I needed to make this. It's like color photos. There's some writing in it, and it really documented my residency during the pandemic, which was like the weirdest time to do an artist residency. So I love doing this book. And I thought, oh, I'll talk about this. But that actually it's not my favorite book, only because I feel like it doesn't like wholly represent for me what bookmaking is, which are really handmade, kind of dirty, unique, one-of-a-kind books. So, and then I started thinking about Brooklyn, and for Brooklyn, I had made this large book. This is kind of when I started to create books with this marbling process. And I made a book in 2014 for this exhibition that I had at Brooklyn. Amy Lusty was a curator, and she helped me bind this book. And this is a book that I wanted to focus on first before I kind of get into everything else, because really I feel like bookmaking, I kind of feel like I've been making one book this entire time, but this book was important. Let's see, let me go to my book cam. This is the book in question. It is a large book, and this is an important one. We bound it. Amy helped me bind it at Brooklyn, and it's a cloth bound hardcover. You can see how big it is. But most importantly, I've had this book in storage for years. This is 7 years old. And when I opened it up, the smells, to me, like a good book smells really good. This book smells amazing. I wish I could emanate the smell to the viewers tonight, but there's smells. It brought me right back to this moment in 2014. And a lot of my books, these are one of a kind. They're printed with a mix of oil paint, dirty water, and I'll show you guys how I do that. But for me, revisiting this book for this event was really a wonderful kind of way to remember why I make books. And the reason why I make books, one of the main reasons why I make books is because it's like this way to kind of like distill an art practice into a tangible object, into this like physical thing you can touch, you can smell, you can put it on your bookcase. It can go into people's homes in this way that, I don't know, art on the wall or experiential art isn't, it's just not the same, right? So for me, this is, it was really great to revisit this. It brought back memories of that moment. And, what's cool is like, I could never redo this for whatever reason. The time, the water, the ink, the paint that I was using, it's very specific to this time period. I could never redo this. And when I look at it, I can tell exactly when I made it, because of the way it looks, because of the way the types of colors I was using at the time. It's very telling for me. So this is maybe the biggest book I've made, which doesn't necessarily make it the best, but it does make it a good starting point for what I wanted to talk about today, which is why I make books. The importance of making tactile objects still in our digital world, and the importance of like smelling things, the importance of like touching physical objects, the importance of kind of printmaking and making multiples as a way to work it out, right? Like I feel like for me, art making, a lot of it is about working out situations, working out what's happening in the world, working out what I see and feel, right? So there's the book back in 2014. This is the opening for that night at Bookland, the old Bookland on Greenpoint Avenue. And this was great because, I had been making books for years, but I really kind of put a focus in on this practice. And for me, this practice, it set me on a journey that I'm still on now to this day. And this journey is one where I have been collaborating with water. And so you can see my inflatable swimming pool. This is around the time of that show. And, the inflatable swimming pool was a way to collect water, and water was a way to create these prints. A couple years before that, I had discovered suminigashi, which is a Japanese printmaking technique that translates to floating ink. And it's essentially painting on water. You create a floating painting and you print from it. You put paper down and you create a print. I often teach classes. You can see this young girl's face. That's certainly what I looked like the first time I did it too. There's a magic to this process, and I completely became obsessed and started making prints. I started making books, so many books. And, the thing about these books is early on, I was aware of paper marbling, of course, the end papers, the end pages in old books. And it was just so funny to me to make a book of just the end pages, but these were my end pages, and they were decidedly raw and gnarly. And, I was really interested in breaking all the rules that come to paper marbling, which is kind of I feel like, I would show these to antiquarian booksellers or whatever, and they would sometimes be, they would scoff at it because it was so kind of gross compared to, sort of the traditional paper marbling that everyone's used to. But I love that, and I threw cinders in my my slideshow because that was the gallery that I ran starting in 2004 till we had a physical space until 2012. But that's in that space, I was creating books, I was selling lots of books, and it certainly helped me kind of tap into a community, and part of that community, these are photos from the book fair, the New York Art Book Fair. And, that community was amazing too, which Bookland was a part of. The New York Art Book Fair, is an insane kind of collective of bookmakers, but that was a really a wonderful way into that world, and we did it for, I think we did it for 13 years as Cinders, the very first 13 years of the New York Art Book Fair. I am now retired from that, thankfully, but I did enjoy it while I was doing it. And, along the way, I've been spending a lot of time down at the water. In New York, I have always sought the water as solace. Water is a way for me to kind of escape everything and, escape the city. But of course, in New York City, the water is pretty polluted, right? So, on the left here, you've got the East River. This is the Newtown Creek, which is a tributary that's about 3.5 miles. It runs into New York City. Brooklyn is on the bottom. Queens, Long Island City is on the top here. And, because I was spending so much time down there and it looked like this, at a certain point, I began wanting to print that, and so through bookmaking, through printmaking, all of a sudden I found myself in a boat on the Newtown Creek making these prints as well, and this is a photo from 2015. That was a mind expanding moment because all of a sudden, I was out of the studio. I was in the world. I was in the hydro commons, right? And so for me, this is all kind of through printmaking and bookmaking that I discovered other ways to create work in the world and break down the walls of the studio. I call it tsunami nagashi, right? And so, I continue to make these end pages, these end papers with the water and what we do to the water, so all of a sudden I'm creating prints and making books from the wastewater, from our detritus, right? From our waterways, all the waterways around us, and it was a really important moment for me to be able to expand on bookmaking in other ways. These are works I made later on last year, in fact, and looking back on it, I'm realizing now these are scrolls. These are more forms of pages. These prints here are created with styrofoam mainly that I had pulled out of waterways in New York City and in Virginia as well. But more types of end papers in scroll form, other types of languages really that I've been developing over the course of, the past decade. And, this is a book I made. Well, this is a funny book because I made it with Bookland's own Marshall Weber and his organic collective. But this was fun because I was given these incredible old maps about, 6 or 7 years ago, and I printed on them all summer. I would print on one page at a time, and I gave it back to, I think I sent it back to Christopher C.K. Wild, and I sort of forgot about it, and then it resurfaced, and Marshall showed it to me, and it was incredible. It had gone through the hands of 4 different artists, and kind of a wonderful way to collaborate with people, to spend time with people, to create a space that we could all be in this book, so I don't know, that was another cool way of bookmaking, creating community for me, creating radical spaces for us to play in, and most recently I made this book. This is an ice book. This is a book made out of ice. I had been asked by the artist Bajia Erland, who created the ice book sculpture idea, to create a book and really kind of like dedicate it to a body of water in New York City. So I chose the Newtown Creek, but also it was around the time of the tragic killings in Atlanta of Asian American workers, and I decided to kind of dedicate it to them. And so it was this sort of, for me, a beautiful moment to be able to create a book that would melt into the water. I had embedded it with seeds, lotus seeds, which of course are, kind of symbols of everlasting life. But, just one of the many ways that books and book making can be expanded on, and for me is just carried through my whole practice, and it was really fun to to revisit all this stuff, and think about it in terms of books. I think I hadn't really considered it. When you're making work, you're just making it, and oftentimes you don't sit back to really reflect. But it was really fun for this event to go back to the earlier books, to go back to, making books for the book fair and for Bookland and for my own gallery, and creating these small, intimate objects for people to hold and take into their homes, So, I don't know. For me, I think a favorite book, it's hard to choose. But what I do think is that creating books has led me down this path that I would have never have gone down otherwise, which is pretty cool. And I mean, back to this book again, if I could just have an odorama video for you, it just smells so good and feels so good. And it's a large book, which again was, of course, big things are great. I make small books too, of course. And, it was hard to choose a favorite book because they're all just kind of connected to one another. For me, these books just flow into each other as I make them. And, they're full of experiments. They're full of different papers. They're full of different, feelings of when I made it. But, they're sort of part of this larger series and really practice that for me has been such a gateway and journey into lots of other types of, art making happenings and situations and ways of connecting with people, But a lot of what I'm on now really kind of was spawned by these books. And I feel like it was cool to revisit all of this stuff. It was great to have the opportunity to consider what a favorite book would be. And I don't know. Thanks for having me, Monica. This has been cool to think about.
Hey, thank you for that, sTo. That was amazing.
Yeah.
As evidence of it's amazing, and I'm seeing Marshall rapidly chatting a bunch of stuff that he may or may not know is actually in a public chat. So just so you know, Marshall. But
cool. Yeah, no,
classic.
I'm not looking at the YouTube, so I have no idea what's going on.
Well, I mean, I don't see any direct questions, which is fine because I have some. And we were chatting a little bit before we jumped on, but I spent a lot of time on your website before we took this call, and I'll share that information with everyone because it's such a fun website to look at. You have a radio show that I didn't know about that I had a ton of fun listening to. And then when I was looking through your exhibitions tab, and there's you can actually take a 3D tour of an exhibition, which is so, I mean, sometimes those are hit or miss, but I really got the physicality of it. So I just had kind of a few comments and something that might perform as a question for you, but I'm always impressed with the grotesquerie of the work that you do. So it kind of, to me, it sort of lands it art historically inevitably when you start to use that word. And I am really taken with this idea that it's a book of end papers, and if there's so many people that could talk about the history of end papers and what those mean and what those do. But I wondered, I'm curious about it. It doesn't mean that your book is contentless because it's a book of end papers. There's a lot of content, and some of that content I think you hit on, but you talked about the odor, and so I'm not sure if the book that you're showing, the end papers, is the odor comes from solvents or just like the oils and the inks and the whatever, or if it's like, I'm a stone's throw from the Gowanus Canal, so I'm connected with how pollution and waterways that are stagnant can smell. So I'm like, when I look at your work, I wonder if like, is it paint? Is it pollution? What combination of that is it? And then I'd also love to hear just a little something about your residency at the water treatment plant, because that's just amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing. It was like perfect for me, obviously. Yeah, around the time that I made that book and those prints, I was still mostly in the studio. But I had like gone and gotten some of the water, and the smells emanating from it here right now, I don't know. It's probably a combination of things. It's a little skunky, it's sweet also. But I always love the smell of I love the smell of gasoline. I used to want to drink it as a child, but I don't know. I'm drawn to that type of thing. There's a warmth to it. But I was collecting water from the Newtown Creek mostly, and putting that in my pool, and sort of more of the essence than anything else, until I started going out on the water, with the rowboat, to really kind of capture the deepness of the dirt out there. And I think it's usually those prints are not smellable. I feel like I typically frame them or kind of keep them away from the public, for sort of safety reasons. But I think that that the grimy soul is there, and that's important for me, And so this book has that grimy soul. If you tested it, it would be probably all kinds of just mostly solvents and enamel and spray paint and stuff like that. But some of the later books that are just purely the water and pollution, those are really interesting, because it's in a funny way they sort of smell less actually over time. And yeah, the wastewater treatment facility residency was incredible. I mean, it was a thing that you apply to. So I applied, but coincidentally, it was in Alexandria, Virginia, the town that I grew up in. So it was a town that my parents still live there. So I go back to visit them, of course, but I really couldn't wait to leave, only because, you're, is a little conservative, whatever, I couldn't wait to go, but it was great to come back as an artist and have this kind of mission to be a resident at the wastewater treatment facility, which I basically had a backstage pass. I mean, I could go anywhere I wanted to in there. And I really just observed, I listened, I made prints with the wastewater, which was incredible because the city bought those prints. It was kind of this beautiful cycle of, the citizens created the wastewater. I made prints with the wastewater, and now it's back into the city's collection. It's kind of a beautiful cycle of events. But it was wonderful I think the best part about that residency was to be able to share how I viewed the process to the people who worked there. Because I would be like, this is so amazing and beautiful, and most people there weren't thinking that necessarily. So it was fun to make a book and share that with them, and I was able to kind of see it and put back how I saw it and kind of give it visibility in the way that I witnessed it. So that was really cool.
That's very cool. I'm just going to check in to see if there's any other questions. No, I think we're good to go. So
7:30. This is like, bam.
Look at that.
We're good. We are professional. This
Totally.
channel is really fun.
It is. You should come back. Maybe we'll do more of this.
I have endless books.
You can't decide on your favorite, so you'll just have to come up with a new one.
So hard, yeah.
So yeah, just here's a reminder to check out STo's work at stoishere.com or at SToishere at Instagram. I would normally say contact Booklyn, which you can. We're always in touch with STo, but that website, man, it's really cool. And then just a reminder for anybody who's dropping in right now, what do we got? We have a free copy of the new education manual, and we have a zine workshop that's this Saturday, and then just general information about how awesome Booklyn is at the links that I'm flashing here. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we're going to have John Vasquez Mejias, who's going to talk about the Puerto Rican War, an epic book and one of my favorites. So please come back tomorrow, June 3rd. Have a great night, STo. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
You. Yay, Booklyn.
See you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.